The summer heat scorches the Texas plains, where dust and silence hide more than they reveal. When Navy SEAL Jack Dawson and his loyal dog Rex cross paths with a wounded police officer fleeing a mysterious gunman, one act of rescue pulls them into a war buried beneath the city's glittering skyline. Behind the fires and disappearances lies a powerful developer's empire built on drugs and blood. What began as a soldier's quiet leave becomes a battle for justice on home soil, as Jack calls on his SEAL brothers for one final mission. Outnumbered but unbroken, they fight not for glory, but for grace. Because sometimes the miracles God sends don't come with wings. They come with scars, courage, and a loyal dog at your side. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe for more stories of faith, courage, and the unseen hand of God that still moves through the darkest nights. The Texas sun had no mercy that afternoon. The air shimmered above the cracked earth, and the scent of scorched mesquite drifted through the wind like the breath of a furnace. Grasshoppers leapt between brittle weeds, and the horizon quivered under the weight of heat. Out here, the world was colorless, only shades of gold, brown, and dust. Emily Carter ran. Her boots kicked up spirals of red dust as she sprinted across the abandoned ranch road, lungs searing, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break free of her ribs. She clutched the grip of her service pistol, though she already knew it was empty. The magazine had clicked dry 3 corners back. Her right arm burned where the bullet had grazed her shoulder, and sweat mixed with blood beneath her torn sleeve. She was 31, tall and lean, the kind of athletic build earned from years of patrol shifts and early morning runs. Her auburn hair, once tied neatly beneath her police cap, now clung to her face in damp strands. Her blue eyes, sharp and defiant, darted across the landscape searching for cover. A tree, a rock, anything. But the land was open, merciless, and her shadow was the only thing that ran beside her. Behind her, the man in the black jacket moved like a ghost. He was heavy-set, but steady, the sort of strength that came not from the gym, but from long years of hard labor or darker work. A faded tattoo of a serpent wound around his wrist. His steps were unhurried, confident. He knew she couldn't outrun him for long. Emily's breath hitched. She thought of the fire last week, the farmhouse reduced to ashes, the old couple found dead inside. Everyone said it was an accident, but she knew better. Every accident pointed to the same land development company, Horizon Estates, swallowing properties one by one. And now she had found something. A USB drive left by a whistleblower, proof of corruption, maybe worse. But before she could send it to the department, this man had appeared. Her radio was gone, her car burned. All she had was the drive in her pocket and the instinct that had kept her alive for 9 years on the force. The ground sloped downward into a dry creek bed. She stumbled, caught herself, then pressed her body against the cracked mud wall. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. The sun made the world blur and swim. She could hear him now. Slow, deliberate footsteps crunching the gravel above. Officer Carter. The man's voice was calm, almost polite. You've run far enough. She held her breath. Her fingers brushed the small knife strapped to her boot. If he came closer, she'd... A sudden sharp whistle sliced through the air. Then a bark. It was deep, commanding, the kind of bark that turned predators into prey. The man froze, scanning the ridge. From beyond the dry creek, a large German shepherd burst through the haze. Its coat, was dark mahogany with a black saddle, fur glistening under the harsh light. The dog's muscles rippled with every stride, eyes sharp and intelligent as molten amber. It wasn't the frantic bark of a stray. It was controlled, tactical, deliberate. "Rex, hold!" A man's voice called out. Emily twisted toward the sound. A tall figure emerged from behind a fallen fence. Broad-shouldered, sunburned skin, short brown hair flecked with gray at the temples. His jaw was covered in a few days' worth of rugged stubble, and a long scar cut a pale line from his left eyebrow down to his cheek, the kind of mark that came from a place far from peace. Jack Dawson had the quiet presence of someone who had seen too much of war and not enough of mercy. Once a Navy SEAL, now just a man on leave, he lived alone in the hills, fixing fences and pretending the world was simple again. His eyes, steely gray, calm and calculating, assessed the scene in seconds. "Get down!" he barked. Emily dropped instinctively as Rex lunged. The shepherd closed the distance in 3 heartbeats, growling low, circling the man in black like a living storm. The attacker raised his gun, fired. The bullet went wide, ricocheting off a rock. Rex leapt, snapping at the man's arm. The gun fell, clattering into the dirt. Jack was already moving. He sprinted down the slope, dust exploding beneath his boots, and tackled the man before he could reach for the weapon. The two hit the ground hard, a cloud of red dust rising around them. A few quick, precise movements, an elbow to the jaw, a twist of the wrist, and the fight was over. The man lay groaning, disarmed, his face pressed into the dirt. Jack turned to Emily. "You hurt?" She hesitated, still gripping her knife. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who heard trouble," he said evenly. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing." Rex padded between them, panting lightly. His tongue lolled, but his eyes never left the downed attacker. Emily stared at the dog, disciplined, calm, clearly trained. "He's military," she said softly. "Retired," Jack replied, scratching Rex's ear. "We both are." For a moment, the only sound was the wind sighing through the mesquite. Then, from somewhere behind the ridge, a distant rumble, the low, rolling growl of an engine. Jack's expression hardened. "More coming," he said. Emily's pulse spiked again. "You think they're after me?" Jack didn't answer. He crouched beside the unconscious man and searched his pockets, pulling out a small 2-way radio and a silver badge marked with the Horizon Estates logo. His eyes met hers. "You tell me." Emily swallowed. "He's not the only one. They've been covering up arsons. I was close to exposing them." She reached into her pocket, pulled out the small metal drive and held it up. "This is why they're hunting me." Jack nodded once, decisively. "Then we move." He turned to Rex. "Track, home." Rex took point immediately, heading toward the distant hills. Jack grabbed Emily's arm, firm but not rough, and pulled her after him. The sound of engines grew louder, the heat pressing against their backs. As they disappeared into the folds of the landscape, the man in black stirred. His fingers twitched, brushing against the radio Jack had missed. A tiny red light blinked to life. And miles away, inside a sleek office overlooking the burning plains, Richard Hale, CEO of Horizon Estates, a man with cold blue eyes and a suit too perfect for this dusty world, glanced at a monitor flashing an alert. He smiled thinly. "Found her," he murmured. The engines faded behind them, swallowed by the endless hum of cicadas and wind. The red hills of Texas stretched ahead like a sleeping beast, its skin cracked and dry, shimmering under the brutal sun. Jack Dawson moved fast but deliberate, his breathing steady despite the heat. His muscles, hardened by years of SEAL conditioning, seemed built for endurance rather than speed. Emily followed close, stumbling once or twice, but he never looked back. He could hear her boots crunching the gravel, and that was enough to know she was still there. Rex trotted ahead, ears pricked, tail low, every movement precise, a predator trained to move silently even in daylight. They cut through a thicket of cedar and cactus until a weathered shack came into view. Jack's refuge, a small cabin built from salvaged pine, tucked behind a dry creek bed. Smoke still rose faintly from the nearby ridge, where grass fires lingered like ghosts of gunpowder. "Inside," Jack ordered. Emily didn't argue. The cabin smelled of dust, oil, and old leather. A workbench lined one wall, cluttered with tools, spare weapon parts, and a half-finished wood carving of a hawk. On the shelf above, a single-framed photo showed a younger Jack in uniform with a smiling woman and a boy. His sister Laura and her son Ben, both killed 5 years ago in a house fire caused by faulty wiring while Jack was overseas. The loss had carved something permanent into him, a silence that felt heavier than anger. Rex circled once near the door before lying down, chest heaving, eyes still fixed on the window. Jack poured water into a tin cup, handing it to Emily. "Drink slow," he said. She did. Her hands trembled slightly as she brought it to her lips. The cool water hit her throat like relief itself. "You live out here alone?" she asked. "Most people wouldn't call this living," he replied, checking the bolt on his rifle. "I call it quiet." Emily leaned back against the table, still pale beneath her tan. Now that the adrenaline was fading, pain took over. The wound in her shoulder pulsed with every heartbeat. Jack noticed. "You need that stitched," he said flatly. "I've had worse," she murmured. "Don't flatter yourself." He pulled a small med kit from a drawer and set it on the table. "Sit down." She hesitated but obeyed. His hands were steady, the movements efficient, cleaning, dressing, taping. She winced, but didn't cry out. He admired that. "You've seen combat," he said. "Not like you," she answered, "but I've seen fire and people running toward it when everyone else runs away." Jack gave a short nod. "Then you'll understand this. Whoever that man was, he wasn't working alone." He dropped the spent magazine from her pistol and reloaded it from his supply. "They'll keep coming." Emily's eyes sharpened. "Then we find out who sent them. I told you, Horizon Estates. They're not just buying land. They're burning it, forcing sales, covering their tracks, and now they've moved into something worse." She reached into her pocket, pulling out the small metal drive. "This holds proof. Payment records, routes, maybe names, but I can't access it without the key." Jack frowned. "The key?" "It's encrypted. The whistleblower split the code, half with me, half with someone named Daniel Ross, an investigative journalist out of Austin." She paused, uncertain. "He was supposed to meet me yesterday. He didn't show." Jack walked to the window, scanning the horizon. "If he's alive, he's running. If he's not, your drive's just half a bullet." He turned back. "We'll find him." Before she could respond, Rex stiffened, head lifting, ears forward. His low growl rumbled like distant thunder. Jack followed his gaze. A dust cloud swirled far down the dirt road. A truck, moving fast, kicking up gravel. Jack cursed softly. "They found us quicker than I thought." He moved to the cabinet, grabbed his rifle and a small pack. "Back door now." Emily grabbed the flash drive and tucked it inside her boot. "Who's they, Jack?" "Same kind that burns houses for money. Mercs on payroll. They don't ask names." He whistled once, low and sharp. Rex was already up, muscles tense, tail stiff. They slipped out the rear door and climbed up the dry wash behind the cabin. The heat wrapped around them like a living thing. Emily's wound throbbed, but she pushed through. Jack's hand found her elbow, steadying her as they climbed. "You okay?" he asked without looking back. "I will be," she said, though her vision swam. Below, 2 black trucks stopped near the cabin. 6 men stepped out, desert gear, rifles, and masks. The leader, a lean man in tactical gray with a white scar bisecting his lip, scanned the ground. His name was Colt Mercer, former private military contractor, known among mercenaries for his cruelty and precision. He had pale gray eyes that never seemed to blink, and his voice was soft, almost gentle, the kind that made orders sound like suggestions until they became execution. He gestured toward the door. "Check inside. She's not far." His men moved in, rifles up. On the ridge, Jack and Emily watched from cover. "We can't outrun them in daylight," she whispered. Jack's jaw tightened. "We don't. We outsmart them." He pointed to the east, a dried-up cattle trench snaking toward a cluster of abandoned barns. "We cut through there, circle back at dusk. I'll draw them away." Emily grabbed his arm. "You'll get yourself killed." He looked at her, eyes calm, almost indifferent. "Dying's not the worst thing I've done." Before she could argue, he slid down the slope, motioning to Rex. "Stay with her," he ordered. Rex whined, reluctant but obedient. Emily crouched behind the ridge, watching Jack disappear into the sun glare. Minutes later, the crack of a rifle echoed through the hills. Then another. Dust plumed near the trucks as bullets struck. "He's buying us time," Emily realized. Her pulse quickened. She turned to Rex. "Let's move." The dog took the lead, weaving through cactus and dry brush, guiding her toward the barns in the distance. As she ran, her thoughts churned. Who was Jack Dawson really? A soldier turned hermit, haunted by ghosts no one else could see. Why risk his life for a stranger? She didn't know, but instinct told her this. He wasn't saving her because she was a cop. He was saving her because somewhere deep inside he needed to. The wind shifted. The smell of smoke drifted again, heavier this time. Not from the fires on the ridge, but something fresher. Emily stopped, eyes narrowing. A thick column of black smoke rose behind them. The cabin, Jack's cabin, was burning. She stared, frozen, realization washing over her. Whoever these men worked for, they weren't just erasing evidence. They were erasing people. And somewhere behind that wall of smoke, gunfire stopped. Silence fell over the valley, thick and merciless. Emily swallowed hard, dread creeping through her chest. "Jack," she whispered. Then a single shot cracked across the plains, sharp, distant, final. The sun was sinking low, staining the Texas sky in streaks of copper and blood. The wind carried the bitter tang of smoke and metal, the kind of scent that clung to a person long after the flames died. Emily Carter crouched behind a line of jagged rocks on the far ridge, her breath shallow, her hands trembling around the grip of Jack's spare pistol. Rex lay beside her, chest heaving, ears flicking with every echo from the valley below. The fire had spread fast. What remained of Jack's cabin was now a skeleton of flame and blackened timber. Emily's eyes stung, though she wasn't sure if it was from the smoke or the thought that the man who had saved her, who had walked back into the fire without hesitation, might be gone. For a long moment she could only listen. The crackle of fire, the dry hiss of wind, the faint, distant creak of metal collapsing. No gunshots now, just silence. The kind of silence that screamed. She forced herself to breathe, to think. Jack Dawson wasn't the kind of man who died quietly. If he'd gone down, there would have been a sign. More bodies, more smoke, something. But there was nothing but the whispering flames. Rex shifted, whining softly. His fur was streaked with ash, his tongue dry, but his amber eyes never lost focus. Emily touched his head. "We're going back," she whispered. The dog looked up at her, then toward the blaze as if understanding. He barked once, low, resigned, and stood. Together they descended through the rocks, careful to stay in shadow. By the time they reached the cabin's remains, night had fallen. The air shimmered with heat, but most of the fire had burned out. The ground was still hot under her boots. Emily moved slowly through the wreckage, scanning with the flashlight she'd found in Jack's pack. The beam cut through the smoke. Twisted metal, charred wood, a melted rifle. But no body, no trace of Jack. Her heart leapt, a fragile hope she tried not to believe in. Maybe he was still alive. Maybe that last shot hadn't been his. She crouched near what had been the table. Beneath the debris, something glinted. She brushed away ash and found a burned metal badge. Colt Mercer's men had dropped it. She remembered his name from a file back at the precinct. Ex-military, dishonorably discharged after a massacre in Kandahar. That explained the precision, the lack of mercy. She pocketed the badge. It might be proof later, if there was a later. Rex growled suddenly, his ears flattened, body low. Emily froze. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Slow, uneven. Someone was coming down the path from the ridge. She turned off the flashlight and crouched behind the remains of a wall. The steps drew closer until a figure appeared in the flickering light of dying embers. He was tall, thin, and filthy, his clothes torn and covered in soot. His beard was streaked with gray, and his hand shook as he stumbled forward, muttering under his breath. A local, maybe, or someone who'd been hiding nearby. Emily rose, gun raised. "Stop right there," she ordered. The man flinched, raising both hands. "Don't shoot. I'm not one of them." His voice was hoarse, desperate. Emily's light snapped on, cutting across his face. Beneath the grime, he was probably in his late 50s, a weathered Texan with deep-set hazel eyes and skin burnt by decades of sun. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Name's Eli Turner," he croaked. "I work maintenance for Horizon Estates, or used to, before I saw what they were really doing." He pointed toward the horizon, his fingers trembling. "They ain't building houses, miss. They're moving product. Drugs, guns, whatever pays." Emily kept her weapon steady. "Why are you here?" "I came to warn the man in that cabin," Eli said, voice shaking. "Saw him a week ago. Thought he was one of them at first. But then I saw the dog. Soldiers always keep eyes like that. Both of 'em. Thought he might be someone who'd fight back." Her pulse quickened. "You saw Jack?" Eli nodded. "Earlier today. Before the fire started. He was heading east. Said something about a convoy in the canyon. He looked hurt, bleeding from the arm, but walking." Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. Alive. He was alive. She stepped closer, lowering the gun slightly. "What convoy?" Eli hesitated, glancing around nervously. "They're using the old quarry off Highway 16, shipping containers disguised as construction crates. Trucks move every night under police escort. You didn't hear it from me." Rex barked softly, drawing their attention. Emily saw headlights flicker far down the road, 2, then 4 beams cutting through the dark. She hissed, "We have to move." Eli's panic rose. No, I can't. Now?" Emily grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the dry creek. They half ran, half slid down the embankment as engines rumbled in the distance. She could hear men shouting, boots crunching. Horizon's cleanup crew. They reached the shelter of an old windmill on the creek's edge, its rusted blades creaking in the warm night breeze. Eli collapsed against the metal frame, panting hard. "They'll kill me if they find me," he gasped. Emily knelt beside him. "Then help me stop them. You said they move product at night. When?" "Every night," Eli replied. "Same route, same time. Midnight." He coughed, pulling a folded piece of paper from his pocket, a rough hand-drawn map stained with grease. "That's the canyon. Hale keeps a private landing strip there for his planes, not on any record." "Hale?" she muttered. The name burned like acid. "He's the one behind it all?" Eli nodded. "Yeah, him and Mercer. The scarred bastard runs security. You go near that place, you'll die." "I'll take my chances." Rex lifted his head suddenly, ears twitching. Emily turned toward the road. The headlights had stopped moving. Then a voice cut through the air, amplified through a loudspeaker. "Officer Carter?" Her blood froze. The voice was smooth, commanding. Colt Mercer himself. "I know you're out there. I admire the effort, really. But let's make it easy. Walk out, hands up, and maybe the next fire won't have your name on it." Eli looked at her, terrified. "He's got men everywhere. They'll burn us out." Emily exhaled slowly, forcing calm into her voice. "Not tonight." She looked at the map again, memorizing every line. "We move toward the quarry. If Jack's alive, that's where he's going." She tucked the paper into her pocket, grabbed Eli's arm, and motioned to Rex. The shepherd's tail was low, his muscles tense. He understood the danger. The 3 of them crept deeper into the creek bed, moving north under the cover of the dry brush. Behind them, Mercer's men swept flashlights through the ruins, their beams slicing across smoke and shadow. They made it 100 yards before the first flare arced into the sky. The night erupted in red light. Emily cursed, ducking low as gunfire cracked behind them. Dirt exploded near her feet. Rex barked, spinning, growling deep. Then from the distance, faint but distinct, a single gunshot answered. Different. Controlled. Emily froze. She knew that sound. It was Jack's rifle. She turned toward the east, heart hammering. Maybe the fire hadn't claimed him after all. Maybe the fight wasn't over yet. "Come on," she whispered. "Let's go find him." And beneath the red-lit sky of the Texas night, they ran. The desert night hung heavy, draped in silence except for the whisper of dry wind sliding through the canyon brush. Emily Carter crouched behind a boulder, sweat tracing lines through the dust on her face. Her eyes, green and sharp, even in exhaustion, flicked between the shadows where the moonlight broke against the rock. Rex was at her side. The 6-year-old German shepherd's fur now caked in sand, his flanks rising and falling in perfect rhythm, his dark brown eyes alert and intelligent. Beside them, Eli Turner struggled to catch his breath. The older man's wiry frame and sunburnt skin seemed carved from the same stone as the land itself, but his trembling hands betrayed nerves that decades of working for Horizon Estates had never taught him to master. They had followed his map across 30 miles of rugged terrain, arriving at a wide basin ringed by cliffs. a place locals called the Devil's Hollow. The air shimmered with heat, even at night, carrying the faint stench of gasoline. Below them stretched a field of lights, industrial flood lamps mounted on poles, illuminating trucks, cargo crates, and men moving in mechanical rhythm. Emily raised her binoculars. "That's not a construction site," she whispered. "That's a dam operation." Dozens of armed guards in desert fatigues patrolled the perimeter. The crates bore Horizon's emblem, but the labels were false. Building materials. She focused the lenses closer and froze. The crates weren't filled with bricks or pipes. They were stacked with bricks of narcotics sealed in military-grade plastic. Eli swallowed hard. "Told you, miss. Hale's building more than homes. He's building an empire." His voice cracked with bitterness. "When I found out what they were doing, they torched my workshop and said it was an accident." He rubbed his burned hand absently, the scars glowing faintly under the moonlight. "That's what they do to people who talk." Emily lowered the binoculars, her mind racing. "We need to find proof," she said. "Something that can't be erased." She glanced at the laptop Eli carried in his pack, old, dented, but capable of connecting to the truck's internal network if they could get close enough. Rex growled softly. Emily turned. Movement above the ridge. A silhouette, broad-shouldered, cautious, emerging from the dark. The rifle glinted under the moonlight. She aimed her gun instantly. "Stop!" she hissed. The figure froze, then lifted both hands slowly. "Easy, Carter." Emily's breath caught. She knew that voice. Jack Dawson stepped into view, his clothes blackened, his left arm wrapped in a makeshift bandage, face streaked with soot, but eyes bright and focused. His jaw was rough with 3 days' stubble, and the exhaustion in his features was offset by that steady calm she had come to know. Eli gasped. "Son of a... You're alive!" "Barely," Jack said, sliding down beside them. "Mercers. Men tried to finish me, but they're as bad at hunting as they are at thinking." He dropped a small black pouch into Emily's hands. "Found this near the wreckage. It's a data chip from one of their trucks. Coordinates, shipments, everything. But they'll move the evidence at dawn." Emily studied him, torn between relief and anger. "You went back into that fire for this?" He shrugged. "Better than sitting around waiting to die." His eyes met hers, a brief, unspoken connection forged in smoke and danger. Then he turned to Eli. "How far is their signal hub?" "South side," Eli said, pointing toward a cluster of trailers near a generator tower. "That's where they log everything before the trucks roll out." Jack's gaze followed the line of guards, then shifted back to Emily. "We go in quiet. You two stick to the ridge. I'll take the ground." "No," Emily said sharply. "We do this together. You don't get to disappear again." For a heartbeat, Jack's expression softened, the soldier's walls cracking. Then he nodded. "All right, together." They descended into the basin, moving through sagebrush and metal skeletons of old mining rigs. The night pulsed with the hum of engines. Jack led, crouched low, moving like a shadow. Emily followed, every sense alive. Rex was the anchor between them, his paws silent on the dust. They slipped behind a stack of empty barrels. The sound of men laughing carried from the guardhouse. Low, ugly. Through the crack between containers, Emily saw him, Richard Hale, the man behind Horizon Estates. In person, he was taller than she expected, early 50s, with slick gray hair and an expensive linen shirt rolled at the sleeves. His tan was the cultivated kind, earned from yacht decks rather than labor. But what caught Emily wasn't his appearance. It was his smile, cold, confident, the kind of smile that belonged to someone who had never paid for his own sins. Hale was talking to Colt Mercer, the scarred mercenary leader. The white mark across Mercer's lip looked sharper under the floodlight. He leaned casually against a truck, cleaning his pistol as Hale paced. "We're behind schedule," Hale snapped. "The shipment leaves tonight. I want no mistakes." Mercer smirked. "You hired professionals, not children. The only mistake was thinking that cop survived." Emily's jaw tightened. She raised her weapon, but Jack placed a hand on her wrist. "Not yet," he murmured. Eli pulled the laptop from his pack, connecting a small antenna. "Give me 60 seconds to breach their signal feed," he whispered. His hand shook, but his focus sharpened, the kind of concentration only desperation could give. Jack scanned the perimeter, guards rotating, lights sweeping. He leaned closer to Emily. "Once we have the data, we're done. We send it to the feds, and this all burns without a match." "Understood," she whispered. Suddenly, Rex's ears pricked. He growled low, staring behind them. A guard had wandered off his route, flashlight beam sweeping dangerously close. Jack drew his knife, silent, smooth, and in one motion vanished into the darkness. A muffled grunt later, the light went out. When Jack returned, his knife was clean, his expression unreadable. Eli's laptop pinged softly. "Got it," he breathed. "Coordinates, manifest, all of it." He hit a final command, transmitting the files through an encrypted channel. "It's uploading to a cloud backup. No one can delete this now." But before Emily could reply, a blinding spotlight exploded across the yard. A siren blared. "Intruders!" someone shouted. The night erupted in chaos. Jack cursed. They traced the signal. Gunfire cracked. Bullets tore through the containers, sending sparks flying. Rex barked, lunging forward as Jack returned fire, covering Eli and Emily's retreat. Hale and Mercer vanished into the smoke, shouting orders. Trucks roared to life. Eli stumbled, clutching his chest. "Go!" he gasped. "I'll slow them." Jack grabbed him by the collar. "No one's dying tonight." He dragged the older man behind a bulldozer as Emily fired toward the guards closing in. The roar of engines drowned everything. Rex suddenly bolted toward the side road, barking frantically. Emily followed his gaze. One of the trucks was breaking away from the convoy, its cargo bed stacked with sealed crates marked Project Sunrise. Her blood ran cold. The name matched the encrypted tag on the flash drive, the real operation, the evidence they hadn't yet uncovered. Jack saw it too. "That's their core shipment," he said. "If it leaves, we lose everything." Emily's pulse thundered. "Then we stop it." As the convoy thundered toward the highway, Jack raised his rifle, eyes narrowing through the haze. "Get ready," he said, and with the flash of muzzle fire and the scream of engines fading into the night, the desert held its breath once more. The convoy thundered across the desert like a steel storm. Dust and heat rose behind the line of armored trucks, their engines roaring through the endless night. Jack Dawson's hands gripped the wheel of the stolen pickup so tightly that his knuckles whitened beneath the dirt. The headlights from the fleeing transport ahead cut jagged paths across the sand. Inside that lid truck was the secret that could bury Horizon Estates and the men who would kill to protect it. Emily sat beside him, face illuminated by the dashboard's faint glow, jaw set with determination. Her green eyes burned with the reflection of oncoming firelight. In the back seat, Eli Turner clutched the laptop to his chest like a lifeline, his skin slick with sweat. Rex leaned out the open window, ears flattened by the wind, his deep brown coat rippling with each gust. The desert blurred around them. Jack's arm still throbbed from the wound he'd taken during the last firefight, but he didn't let it slow him. "You sure this is the right truck?" he shouted over the roar. Eli nodded, checking the digital signal blinking on his screen. "Positive. That cargo's not drugs. It's something worse. Hale called it Project Sunrise. Whatever it is, they're trying to move it before dawn." Emily reloaded her pistol, her hand steady despite the bouncing vehicle. "Then we stopped them before they reached the highway." She looked out the window. The moonlight revealed the glint of armed escorts, 2 SUVs flanking the truck like wolves. "We'll have company." Jack's lips curved into a grim smile. "Good. I hate long drives." He jerked the wheel, cutting across a washout, sending the pickup skidding through sand. Bullets whistled from behind. "They've spotted us." Emily ducked as glass shattered, shards slicing across her cheek. "Keep her steady," she shouted. Jack swerved again, dust cloaking their trail. Rex barked sharply, a warning. In the rearview mirror, one of the SUVs accelerated, headlights glaring. Behind the wheel was a massive man with tattoos crawling up his neck. His name, Emily recognized from a file photo, was Lance Cutter, one of Mercer's enforcers, ex-Marine, dishonorably discharged for brutality in Fallujah. His face was square, nose broken twice, and his left eye glinted with a faint metallic sheen, a prosthetic from shrapnel. Cutter was the kind of man who smiled when he hurt someone. He rammed their bumper once, twice, grinning through the cracked windshield. "Persistent bastard," Jack muttered. Emily leaned out her window, firing 3 quick shots. One hit the SUV's hood, sparks bursting. Cutter only laughed. "You're going to need more than that, sweetheart." His voice carried even over the roar of engines. Jack's jaw tightened. "Hang on." He slammed the brakes hard. The SUV shot forward, clipping the truck's rear fender before spinning sideways in a plume of dust. The explosion lit the night like lightning. Emily caught her breath as debris rained across the desert floor. "Nice driving," she said, breathless. Jack didn't answer. His eyes were on the horizon. The main truck was veering east toward a cluster of oil derricks. "He's heading for cover," Jack said. "He'll use the rigs to lose us." Eli's voice trembled. "We can't lose him, Jack. That cargo, whatever it is, Hale's been funneling millions through black accounts just to protect it." Rex growled low, sensing Jack's tension. Jack downshifted and accelerated again, the truck bucking as they crossed uneven terrain. Wind whipped Emily's hair loose from its braid, streaking it with dust and moonlight. As they neared the oil fields, the air grew thick with the smell of diesel and rust. The ground shimmered with heat, even at midnight. Metal towers loomed above them, moaning with the wind. The lead transport slowed, maneuvering between the skeletal derricks. Jack cut the engine and coasted the pickup behind a ridge of boulders. The sudden silence rang in their ears. He turned to Emily. "We finished this on foot." Eli hesitated. "You're outgunned, both of you." Jack glanced back, voice even. "We've been outgunned before." He loaded his rifle, checking the chamber. "Stay here. If we don't make it out, send the data to the nearest DEA field office." Emily stepped out before he could argue further. "You're not leaving me behind again." Jack's stare softened briefly, just enough for her to see the exhaustion in his eyes. "Then stay low, Carter." They moved like ghosts through the metal graveyard, Rex leading. The shepherd's keen nose guided them through the haze of oil fumes. Between the clangs of old machinery, faint voices echoed. Hale's men were unloading crates from the truck, stacking them near a small fuel tank. From the shadows, Emily could see Mercer giving orders. Colt Mercer looked even more menacing now, his tactical vest smeared with dust, the scar across his lip deepened by the harsh light. His pale gray eyes scanned the darkness like a predator's. He barked orders to his remaining men, moving with the easy menace of someone who'd survived too many wars to care about morality. Beside him stood Dr. Sylvia Wren, a thin woman in a white lab coat that looked wildly out of place in the desert. She was in her 40s, sharp-faced, her brown hair tied in a severe knot, and her voice, even from afar, carried a brittle authority. Emily recognized her from an internal memo. A biochemist once employed by the U.S. Army, rumored to have gone rogue after her husband's death in a lab explosion. "It's unstable," Sylvia shouted. "You can't just move it without containment." Mercer snarled, grabbing her arm. "We move it now, or Hale kills us all. You think he cares about science?" He shoved her toward the truck. "You're lucky I need you breathing." Jack's hand tensed on the rifle. "They've got a scientist," he murmured. "And if she's right, that cargo isn't just drugs." "Then what?" Emily whispered. Before he could answer, one of Mercer's men spotted movement. Rex's tail flickered in the dim light. "Over there!" he shouted. Gunfire erupted. Jack pushed Emily behind a pipe, returning fire. The canyon echoed with chaos. Sparks flew as bullets struck metal. Rex lunged at a guard who got too close, his powerful jaws snapping onto the man's sleeve, pulling him down. Emily fired back to back, dropping another assailant. "They're surrounding us." Jack looked toward the truck. Mercer was climbing into the cab, dragging Sylvia with him. The engine roared. "They're taking the cargo!" Jack shouted. He turned to Emily. "Get Eli out of here now!" "I'm not leaving you," she protested. He met her eyes, calm, steady, final. "You promised we'd finish this together. This is me finishing it." Before she could answer, he broke cover, sprinting through the storm of bullets toward the departing truck. Rex barked once, a sound between command and farewell, and followed. Jack leapt onto the back of the moving transport, gripping the frame with one hand, rifle slung over his shoulder. Inside, Mercer turned, his cold smile cutting through the chaos. "I knew you were too stubborn to die." Jack's reply was drowned by the roar of the engine as the truck disappeared into the smoke-filled desert, leaving Emily and Eli staring after it, powerless but alive. The night fell silent again, broken only by the echo of Rex's bark fading into the distance. The truck tore across the desert as the first light of dawn cracked the horizon, painting the sand in bands of silver and rose. Jack Dawson clung to the steel railing of the cargo bed, his boots slipping on oil-streaked metal as wind screamed past him. The truck was a monster of machinery, black smoke belching from its stacks, tires grinding the desert floor into flame-colored dust. Ahead, the sun was rising, an ironic herald to the very project that threatened to burn the world anew. Project Sunrise. Inside the cab, Colt Mercer drove with one hand, the other gripping his pistol loosely. His scarred lip curled into a smile. "You never quit, do you, Seal?" he shouted over the roar of the engine. Behind him sat Dr. Sylvia Wren, bound by zip ties, but still defiant. The sunlight caught her gaunt face and her sharp gray eyes, reflecting both fear and guilt. "You're driving us to hell," she hissed. Mercer laughed. "Lady, we're already there." Jack pulled himself onto the roof, chest heaving. The heat from the engine scorched through his torn clothes. His rifle was gone, left behind in the chaos. Now it was just his knife, his fists, and the weight of everything he had left to protect. Inside the cargo bay behind him, the crates marked Project Sunrise rattled ominously. He knew what was inside. Sylvia's desperate confession had told him enough. It wasn't just drugs. It was a viral agent. Engineered, weaponized, volatile. If it leaked, the desert wind would carry death across counties before noon. He crawled forward toward the windshield, crouched low as bullets tore through the roof from Mercer's gun. Metal shrieked. Jack slammed his fist against the roof, then kicked through the glass of the passenger's side, rolling inside the cab. The truck swerved violently. Mercer cursed, aiming the pistol, but Jack was faster. The two men collided like forces of nature. Fists, elbows, the sound of bone meeting bone. Mercer was built like carved iron, his movements efficient, honed by decades of combat. His gray eyes burned with the cold confidence of a killer who'd already made peace with hell. "You think you can stop this?" he spat, blocking a punch and driving his knee into Jack's ribs. "This world doesn't need heroes anymore. It needs survivors." Jack staggered. The air ripped from his lungs, but his voice came low and steady. "Survivors like you built this mess." He drove his elbow into Mercer's jaw, the blow cracking like thunder. The pistol flew from Mercer's hand, clattering to the floor. Sylvia screamed as the truck veered toward a ravine, tires spitting gravel. "Watch the road!" she yelled. Mercer lunged for the wheel, but Jack caught him, wrenching him backward. The two men crashed through the side door, tumbling out into the open air. They hit the sand hard, rolling down the embankment. Dust exploded around them. The truck roared ahead without a driver, still carrying its deadly cargo. Jack struggled to his knees, blood streaking down his temple. Mercer was already standing, his shadow cutting through the dust. "You can't stop it, Dawson!" he shouted, drawing a combat knife from his belt. The morning light caught the steel, glinting red. That virus was meant to burn this world clean, and maybe that's exactly what it deserves. Jack wiped blood from his mouth, rising slowly. "You sound like a man trying to justify murder." "I'm not justifying it," Mercer said, stepping closer, voice low and steady. "I'm accepting it." They collided again. The fight was brutal, primal. No tactics, no hesitation. Mercer's blade slashed Jack's arm, but the SEAL didn't retreat. He countered, slamming Mercer's face into the sand, disarming him, but Mercer twisted, driving his knee into Jack's chest. Both men were gasping now, sweat and grit blending with blood. At the crest of the hill above, the runaway truck smashed through a rusted barrier and skidded toward the ravine's edge. Sylvia screamed from inside the cab, still bound, struggling against her restraints. Jack saw it out of the corner of his eye. The cargo, the virus, the end of everything, seconds away from impact. He shoved Mercer back, sprinting uphill. Mercer lunged after him, grabbing his boot, dragging him down. "If I die," Mercer growled, "the world dies with me." Jack twisted, grabbed Mercer's collar, and slammed his forehead into the man's face. The mercenary dropped, momentarily stunned. Jack didn't look back. He ran, every muscle burning, and leapt onto the side of the speeding truck as it began to tilt toward the ravine. Inside, Sylvia was halfway through freeing her wrists with a shard of glass. Her voice was hoarse from screaming. "If it goes over, the containment breaks." "I know," Jack grunted, pulling himself through the window. He crawled over her, reached the steering wheel, and yanked it hard. The truck skidded sideways, tires screeching. Metal screamed in protest. The front end teetered at the edge, half in sunlight, half in shadow. Mercer appeared behind them, bloodied but alive, climbing onto the back of the truck. "You're wasting your breath, hero," he rasped. "It's over." He raised his knife again. Jack turned, eyes cold as the steel itself. "You're right." In one motion, he slammed the gear shift into reverse and leapt from the cab, dragging Sylvia with him. Mercer's expression flickered, surprise, then fury. As the truck groaned, gravity taking hold. It slid backward off the cliff, the cargo bay bursting open mid-fall. The explosion came a heartbeat later, a blinding bloom of fire, dust, and light. The shock wave hit like a physical wall, throwing Jack and Sylvia to the ground. For a moment there was nothing but heat, silence, and the scent of burning sand. When the light faded, Mercer was gone, swallowed by the flames. The truck lay in twisted ruins at the bottom of the ravine. Above, Jack slowly pushed himself upright, coughing, his vision swimming. Sylvia lay beside him, dazed but alive. "You just destroyed years of work," she whispered, half in awe, half in grief. Jack stared at the smoking wreckage, his voice quiet. "No, I destroyed a weapon." A distant sound reached them. Barking. Rex. The German shepherd bounded over the ridge, dust flying from his paws, tail whipping. Emily was right behind him, face streaked with soot, her eyes wide when she saw Jack. "You're alive," she breathed. Jack managed a faint smile. "Yeah, but I wouldn't call it comfortable." Emily knelt beside him, pressing a trembling hand to his shoulder. "You did it. It's over." Sylvia looked between them, her expression softening for the first time. "No," she said quietly. "It's just beginning. Hale won't stop. He'll rebuild." Jack met Emily's gaze, the exhaustion in his eyes tempered by resolve. "Then we rebuild faster." The rising sun broke fully over the horizon, washing the desert in light. The nightmare of the night before dissolved into pale gold, the smoke curling upward like ghosts finally freed. Rex sat beside them, ears perked, watching the horizon. Emily leaned her head against Jack's shoulder, both of them silent as the wind carried the last traces of the fire away. In the distance, sirens began to wail, the first sound of law and justice returning to the desert. When the last embers faded from the desert and the smoke thinned into the endless blue, Jack stood beneath the rising sun, its light spilling over the wreckage, warm and merciful. The battle was over, but the silence that followed felt like a prayer. He looked toward the horizon, where hope and ruin often shared the same sky, and for the first time in years he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, God still walked among men. Because miracles don't always arrive in thunder or angels. Sometimes they come in the shape of a loyal dog's bark breaking through the darkness. Sometimes they hide in the courage of a broken soldier who refuses to give up. And sometimes they shine in the quiet mercy of a woman who chooses to forgive instead of hate. Maybe that's the real miracle, not surviving the storm, but finding faith again when the world gives you every reason not to. So wherever you are, in a city street, on a lonely road, or just fighting your own small battles, remember this: even in the dust and noise of life, God still works through ordinary people, through hands that help, hearts that heal, and stories that remind us that good still wins if we don't stop believing. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Let's see how far faith can travel. And if you believe, as Jack did, that no soul is too lost to be redeemed, then hit subscribe, join our growing family, and may God bless and protect you and your loved ones wherever this new sunrise finds you.